Do the players hate the fans? Do the fans hate the players? Why is there such a big disconnect in football at the moment? Over the last few years, the hot topic has been the amount of games players are playing. Jurgen Klopp was hounded for his opinions on if Liverpool had a Wednesday game and then a 12:30 kickoff. I'm not biased to think a lot of the time he was warranted because Liverpool had so many more of those games compared to any other team in the Premier League. After a while, it does get tiresome listening to these players, these managers, constantly moan about their schedule. And that's not to sound insensitive, because I think there is far too much football going on at the moment. Champions League has just happened this week, and I think it looks good so far. I do think there's issues with the old format. I think the kind of 4 to 6 games in the group stage, they just were boring, weren't they? The top 2 teams were pretty much through and the bottom 2 teams were out. But now we're seeing Champions League teams play on a Thursday. I'm recording this on a Wednesday night. Arsenal will have to play in Bergamo at Atalanta tomorrow night. And it always feels, when you got into the Champions League, it was better than the Europa League, so you didn't have to play it on a Thursday night, and therefore your schedule wasn't as hectic. But now, because they have to fit all the games in by May, early June, they're doing it through December now, they're doing it through January, and there's lesser of a break, which is why I do understand why these players are moaning, why Rodri and Alisson have come out this way. I mean, personally, I don't know why a keeper, I love Alisson to death, but I don't know why a keeper is moaning. I mean, you just have to roam by your 6-yard box. I mean, Rodri, for one, he's probably the most warranted player in the world to complain about the amount of games. He's played nearly every single game possible you can in a calendar year. We got to the Euro final, Man City got so far in most competitions, so I do understand it from his perspective. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a journalist made a good point. He said, just because you're rich, it doesn't mean you can buy an extra lung or an extra leg, because footballers are playing the most they've ever played. And just a quick point, I think it's becoming saturated. I think the product is becoming less in the football world. I love football, I want to see it as much as possible within reason, but I don't need a game every single night, because sometimes when you miss players and teams more, then you get more excited to watch them. There's a reason why everyone got buzzing for Deontay Wilder to fight Tyson Fury, because 99% of the time they're fighting mediocre-ish fighters, and then you get excited for the prize fight. But if every single week there's a prize fight, it just becomes less exciting. And this whole thing, it seems like the anger is somewhat misplaced, because someone like a Rodri, he has to look inwards at his club. And I know he's just a player. He can't look at Sheikh Mansour and basically give him a bit of a finger wag and go, why are you playing me this much? But in reality, it's the clubs who agree to all of this. It's the clubs who want to get the more revenue. But it's a whole thing of, well, then Rodri's on 250, 300 grand a week, and he's not going to get that wage from the club if he doesn't play as many games, if the club isn't broadcasted to 100 countries in the world, and therefore people are buying his shirt. And this is where I think the disconnect with the fans is. Fans will always say, maybe a League 2 or League 1 fan of Rotherham, fan of Gillingham, they'll go, well, our players play 50, 60 plus games a season. We're in the Papa John's, I don't know what it's called, Papa John's Trophy for the sake of it. You got the League Cup, you got the FA Cup, you got the league games, and they play mostly back-to-back. I support Farsley in non-league, and they play on a Saturday and a Tuesday most weeks. So why can they do it? But a footballer who's on 10 times what these players are on, who will have a personal chef, will probably have a lot of in-house personal trainers, will be flying private jets, will be moving first class on a train down to London or Manchester or wherever. Why can't they do it? And even though there is more context, which I'll still get into, I do understand. I mean, I'm a fan, and sometimes I do look at these players going, What are you moaning at? Compared to so many people, and I know this is always the easy one to say, and I know this is always the crowd please that you'll hear someone like a Simon Jordan on TalkSport saying, or whoever, you could choose to work in a factory and wake up at 5 a.m, commute to your work for an hour and a half on a bike or on the bus, and do a 12-hour shift and get back. And a lot of people still play Sunday League 5-a-side, and I know obviously the physical constraint just in another planet. It is quite, you could call it insensitive, when these players are earning ridiculous sums of money, who they've worked hard for their career. I'm not taking anything away, but there is sometimes a bit of a reality check to go, Rodri, is there internal discussions you can have with your club? 100%. Can you go to Pep Guardiola, who already, again, hates the schedule that they have to play, and go, we need to make a big stand against this, to UEFA, to the Premier League, to all the League Cups? Yeah, completely fair enough. But the fact that they keep on doing it in the media, it's just going to disconnect the fans even more. Why should fans care about players when a lot of players don't care about the fans? Someone like a Jack Grealish, people argue it's for PR. He seems like a genuinely, nice person to his fans. He seems like he actually cares, does a lot of charity and everything like that. Completely fair enough. But he is, I wouldn't say he's the exception, not the rule, but not every single player is like him. A lot of players just won't care. I don't know if you saw that viral clip of Gary Neville talking about Roy Keane back in the day, but apparently Roy Keane just blew his lid in the 2000s when all the Manchester United players just didn't sign charity balls, and Roy Keane had to go to Alex Ferguson and complain to say all these players just aren't asked at signing 10, 20 balls just before training. And I think that is the reality of a lot of players, but then they expect fans to kind of, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but get the world's smallest violin out and play it to him playing 60 games in a season. Is it poor that they can't have holidays, they have a 2-week holiday and then they're back in pre-season? 100% it is. But it's not right to constantly go to the media, and it does sometimes feel like just plain moaning. And also you got to look at it when you see the FA Cup replays getting scrapped, which everyone is just trying to sweep under the rug. That's a huge thing that's happened to the football pyramid. It's insane that has just seemed to go away. And I know why, because the Premier League teams just want it to go away because it's bad press. None of the players care about that. None of the players care about the fact Bradford City fans won't be able to get maybe an away day to Man United because they drew at home. All the revenue that can sometimes keep these clubs alive, which they don't think about, is now just completely wiped out. Maidstone must have earned a fortune on their FA Cup run last year, but that won't be the case nowadays because obviously it will go to extra time, and Man City have 10 billion times the bench than a Morecambe. 9 times out of 10 they're going to win in that extra time. There's no more of the kind of quote-unquote miracles. And why should fans care when they're seeing Newcastle play against Spurs right after the Premier League season finished in a meaningless friendly in Australia? And obviously, I've spoke about it before, it's to get revenue. And what does that revenue get? Obviously more money for the club, but higher salaries for these players. It's funny because a lot of these top players won't go to the Bundesliga, where there's a massive winter break, Portuguese league, where there's lesser teams, so there's lesser games. No, they stay in the Premier League and they stay in La Liga, and for some they stay in Serie A, because that's where the top wages are. With that, unfortunately, it comes all the media requirements that you're going to have to do. Let's face it, would be so tiring. It comes with all the pre-season tours where it's essentially an advert for 2 months in South Korea or North Carolina or wherever. And yeah, players want to be as successful as possible. That comes with the territory. I remember such a good thing that someone said. Jurgen Klopp constantly complained, and he did, and I think somewhat was warranted. But he also said that Klopp, the further you go in competitions, it's somewhat of a skill to manage your squad better. So when you have pushed and pushed, like Pep Guardiola, for 5 substitutes, yet you're only making 1 substitute per game, then who are you blaming? You must look internally, because when you're having very small squads because you like it smaller, well, that's unfortunately a you problem. That's not a fan's problem. That's not a governing body problem that needs to sort it out. But unfortunately, I really believe it is starting to come that you reap what you sow with football fans. No one cares. On a Friday night, Middlesbrough fans would have to go down to Plymouth and take the day off work or whatever like that, or on a Sunday night where there's no trains that have to make their own way down. No one cares about that. But when it is the players, that is when we all need to really care. And that's frankly, it's ridiculous. If you want to make a stand and actually have fans on your side, not as in fans on your side supporting your football club because people are diehard, but I don't think people are diehard in supporting players' welfare, which sounds horrible because, they should be treated with mental and physical health. They need to be treated well because essentially, we all look up to these people in one way or another, not necessarily at my age now. They're not a victim in this, but they are a bit of they've caught in the crossfire, aren't they, between the clubs and the leagues, the managers, and so on and so on. You can't expect fans to care as much because they've been pummeled and pummeled and pummeled. Season tickets keep on going up and up and up. The normal fans are getting priced out of the game. So who are you crying to, basically? Unless it's your club, unless it's the leagues, fans aren't going to care. And therefore, the disconnect is just going to continue and continue until fans are seen as a priority and not just an advertisement for Liverpool investors to see all the fans singing You Never Walk Alone, or the Man City fans singing Blue Moon, or so on and so on. I saw it last weekend, and I think Fulham were doing like £1 drinks before the game, I think until 2 o'clock, which I think that's a brilliant idea, especially in Fulham, which is a really expensive area. But that is just a minute thing to get fans on your side. So, in my opinion, Start doing stuff more like that. Start treating local fans as a priority, and therefore they'll have more, they'll be on your side more. We saw it with Bournemouth versus Newcastle last season, where Newcastle lost and they were hampered by injuries. But the Newcastle fans, and of course some of them are just going to be idiots like every single fan base, but they're having a right go at the players on the pitch. And Trippier had to come over and go, well, what about the injuries? But fans don't see that. And of course, a rational head, if you hadn't lost and blah, 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 you would see that. But when you've travelled down from Newcastle to Bournemouth, and I believe it was a night game on a Wednesday, because I remember it being dark, your head is not going to that place because you are seen as essentially a cash cow. I mean, in conclusion, football, there's too much football at the moment, and I never thought I'd say that, but there is. The Euros suffered for it. It was not the best Euros we've ever seen, and I think that was because a lot of the players were tired and a lot of players were getting injured. We're seeing more muscular injuries, I think, than ever before recently, and it does feel like something's got to give. Mbappe, Vinicius Jr, a top player has to do like an ACL, God forbid, for the clubs to really realise that they are pushing people too hard. Yeah, they also need to treat the fans better to have them on their side. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm being insensitive to the players. I mean, it must be really trying on physical and their mental health. And I completely understand it. Too many games. But you can't expect the average Joe in Burnley or in Leeds to care about a player playing at 12:30 on a Saturday and then playing at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's just a bit out of touch. But if you could leave a like on this video, that'd be great. If you could subscribe to the channel, fantastic. Like I said, leave a comment, but thanks for watching.